what are scientists? What do scientists know that you don't, that they're not telling you about this plane and this dimension? What they're not telling you, this whole plane that we live on, that you call Earth, you call natural, that you call organic, is a matrix. All this whole Earth is a matrix. What we're calling Earth is a matrix. And that's crazy because I heard Nature Boy say this, and he said this, a while back. He said nature is the matrix, and I was like, he's the first one that said that. I give him credit. I give credit to what credit is due. He said nature is the matrix. I said, I had to really deliberate on that, and I said, damn. But he meant nature is a matrix in a good way, meaning that how we're supposed to live, be, and exist is encoded within nature. And nature is the matrix, the grid, the rules, and the regulations and codes by way in which man should live. That's what he meant. But at the same time, he was onto something. Even though I emphatically disagree with that, he still was onto something. Because nature is the matrix as well. It's not separated. Nature is created to limit man, the manifestation of man's ideas, man's imagination, man's creations. The framework of nature is an enemy against that. Notice every time man builds something, nature just blows it down. Nature destroys it. Nature corrodes it. Nature is trying to stop man on this planet. That's what these different viruses are. We blame human beings for creating these viruses, but they still are encoded in nature for this to happen. This impediment, this susceptibility to these viruses that are fatal is really encoded within the matrix of nature. That we are physically and mentally, watch this, trapped within this particular material plane that we're calling Earth. That we are trapped and interwoven within it. It's what we're calling an organic reality. We are intricate within the tapestry of this reality. Man has been trying to get out of this matrix because he believed his way to get to the next dimension is by going into outer spaces, by leaving this particular planet, leaving the Earth, or becoming immune through the use of technology, dealing with robotics, nanotechnology, organ transplant. That's what organ harvesting is about. It's man's battle against this matrix that we're calling nature, which has imposed limits. Nature itself has imposed limits on man, and the whole mission of scientific discovery is to transcend the limits that are imposed by the matrix, which is by this earth plane that we live in. Like certain limitations are imposed, and through scientific discovery and knowledge, we have transcended those limitations. Like, let me give you an example. Like, if we want to go to space, there are certain limitations of being able to actually exist in space. Like they say there's no oxygen and there's no gravity, and they haven't found the food source, and they can only be up there for so long. They can only live up there for so long because it is a limited plane. But man's consciousness is beyond any plane, but it's the physical reality that limits man to particular planes until he develops his consciousness to transcend the laws of the physical plane, of the earth plane, of the earth matrix. Can he ascend to another level of reality or another dimension? Because our consciousness is intricately connected to our physical bodies, our physical vessels, which is very deep, meaning that even though your consciousness is beyond the physical body, the body is an anchor and it is an indicator of where you are at consciously. That's where they talk about reincarnation and reincarnating as different animals and different entities based upon your level of ascension and level of awakening. So it's like you have to go through a body to even get to other consciousness levels and other dimensions and other planes. You still have to go through the body, through the human experiences, and you have to transcend the illusions and the laws that are limiting you within your human experiences, and even in order to have a transcendental experience, in order to actually ascend, you have to actually do it by going through the human experience. Now, many want to look at, nature, as a god. Like, we want to go into nature, and they're worshiping nature. They don't realize that nature is a matrix. Nature is forcing you to become creative in order to transcend the obstacles that nature presents. Terrain, weather, and even the nature of animals and insects and human beings that oppose and create resistance to the embodiment of human ideas, of conscious ideas, of conscious beings. They create resistance, having to move through space, having to travel, the element of time, and time within time as it correlates and as it is synchronized with physical experience. And when you factor those in, you get what you call the dense world, the dense vibration. What scientists have been doing with all of their work is trying to transcend the Earth matrix. The whole GMO thing is not trying to be limited by what this plane naturally produces. You see, when you use the word natural, I'm about to hit you with this. You are also saying limited. I want y'all to intake that. When you say what the natural thing to do, you're also talking about the limited thing to do, meaning that you are limited by certain physical laws, according to man's perception and man's consciousness, man's awakening, limited to certain laws. We call those natural laws. Now, but to be a supernatural being, your consciousness must expand beyond natural laws. The way the white man has tried to expand beyond natural laws is using technology and innovations and modern society. He's going beyond natural laws. He's able to exist in environments that are not naturally conducive, like the North Pole, Alaska, North Dakota, places where it's cold as hell, tropical rainforests, typhoons, monsoons, tornadoes. He's able to exist in these harsh conditions and environments due to his advancement. So he's transcended these natural laws. But these natural laws he's not transcended in a way where he has spiritually or advanced as a soul, because he's confused technological and scientific advancement with soul development, with spiritual development, with ascension as an internal being, because he is not aware of any aspect of himself or existence that he cannot calculate. So he can only progress in ways that belong to the world of calculated things. Like his infinite self cannot further progress or ascend. And many would argue whether he even possesses one, whether he even possesses a soul. Like the totality of the stage and the place for his existence is Earth. Like Earth is not even his just a prison for him. It's like the totality of his existence. But for melanated and cosmic beings who possess carbon, who are stardust, who are celestial beings, this literally is a prison. It all of this is a matrix. However, it is a space where we can become conscious of ourselves beyond the matrix and beyond the limitations. So it's like a contrast. So this contrasts your infinite self so that you can express the infinity of who you are by constantly going beyond the limitations that are imposed upon you by living in what we call this natural world. But you're supposed to transcend it through expanding your consciousness, but not believing in the ways of which we expanded our consciousness. Like this world we live in today is now, they just believe in the ways that we have expanded our consciousness, which is science and technology and, the way medicine has improved, and, they believe in these methods. They're locked into these methods to the point where it has distracted them from the true process of expanding one's consciousness to get to a level of God consciousness, to get to a level of total awakening. So they're slaves to this plane because they worship the type of progress that they feel that they have made in facing the challenges of the natural world. They feel like, okay, I made a little progress, and they're stuck there. They're stuck there. They don't want to go beyond. They don't want to even challenge that. They feel like they're at a safe place. So humanity now is at a safe place. They're at a comfortable place with how the prison is ran. So they're prisoners of their development. They're really prisoners of their own development and stifling further development with the comfort that they have found in what they've already developed, not realizing that consciousness is infinite and that this is the space and place, infiniteness of consciousness is to be realized, to be recognized. This is where we have the breakthroughs. This is the relativity that we needed to be able to even fathom how vast our consciousness is. That's what Earth is. So, Earth is a matrix. The scientists know that. They know that there's all these limits and limits is death. And how the atmosphere, the terrain, the microbial world is trying to keep human beings limited. You got certain human beings that we say we're supposed to live in a certain environment. What they're saying is that we're limited to living there. We're limited to being here. And the so-called old Aboriginal people, they were limited to being here or there and being in this or that situation. The old indigenous people of the earth were. They had to live in this climate and migrate according to the weather and live in certain environments that is conducive. But today, we've transcended those natural laws, and we can live in ways that would have been prohibited to in the past. We can do things that we were prohibited to do and live in ways that were not expedient, that were not advantageous for us, because we have ascended those limitations. Like, you are actually supposed to ascend to Earth. I don't think you all understand. Earth was set up specifically for one reason, for you to transcend it and realize the totality of your consciousness. And I can break that down for you, like, all the pain and suffering and everything that you have went through on this planet is only for one person. It's only for one purpose. And that's for you to transcend it and recognize the totality of who you are, because it literally is all limited to how infinite you are as a soul, as a total light being that is encased within this body, within this capsule. All of it is limited, and we say that, we are victims of this and victims of that, and we're struggling with this and struggling with that, and we pick and choose. but we don't realize how the entirety of this plane is limited for how infinite of beings that we are, as far as our compassion, our love, our creativity, how vast, how we can soar through vast consciousness. This planet is totally limited. It is totally limited, period. And that's what we're here to realize. Through that limitation, we are supposed to be able to see the contrast of our unlimited selves. And that's where you are awakened, when you realize that, damn, I'm bigger than this. You realize that, wait a minute, I'm beyond this. And I don't mean beyond this from an egotistical perspective, from an arrogant perspective, from a grandiose perspective. I mean beyond this, even from a level of compassion, from a level of creativity, from a level of what can be conceptualized, from a level of like, you can do it better than God. You can do it better than the God that created this particular grid or this particular matrix. Like, you could have come up with something better. You could come up with something more that was more heavenly. You could come up with something that was more divine, that was more harmonious. Now you're ascending it. Now you're ascending and transcending this plane when you start thinking on that level, because you realize that how this was set up was limited, and it was intentionally, certain limits was intentionally set up to as illusions, to distract you, to slow you down. It's not how can we solve the problems of the world. It's how can we see the limitations of the world. How can we see how limited it is in contrast to our unlimited self? And once we start to grasp our unlimited self, then we become supernatural beings. And now we can do stuff with the natural world from a God perspective. And a lot of that, they've done that technologically. Like, they've used their technology as gods to say, well, you know what? So what is raining? I'm going to be in this rain because I'm going to build this type of structure and this type of system. So what is no water in the desert? I'm going to do this. So what is cold as hell? I'm going to be a god and I'm going to impose this. I'm not going to be limited by that. And we've done that on many levels in a very physical way. We use our microscopes as scientists to find a way to manipulate nature from a God perspective of consciousness. See, we think the manipulation of nature is easy, but it's the nature of an infinitely creative being to manipulate. That's the nature of your supreme creative consciousness. So we think these scientists, they're wrong. They're genetically modifying this. They're creating this. They're creating that. What they're trying to do is tap into their unlimited self, trying to find the unlimitedness of who they are. Our ancestors knew that without having to play with all this stuff. The Aboriginal people knew about our unlimited selves, and they have found other ways through the astral world to tap into their unlimited self. They knew how to get out of the body and travel into many different dimensions. They knew how to look at this material world in a way, maneuver through all the obstacles and struggles, and they had their own what would be called primitive technology that was really an advanced technology in order to be able to live on this earth. And we forgot a lot of that knowledge, and we're trying to do it all over again as modern society. They're trying to relearn what Aboriginal people had already mastered because they became overly complex out of their arrogance and being grandiose, that they disregarded the ancient knowledge and the ancient culture. They felt like that they were better. So now they stuck in Babylon or Babylon when they should be like, okay, we did this material thing. We got this under control. Now we have to worry about our souls, our spiritual and astral body actually ascending. Like, there's only so many configurations that you're going to be able to do in this material world before you awaken a sleeping giant within yourself, where your aspirations now are non-physical. When you talk about compassion and love and seeing divinity, these are non-physical things. These are shifts in your own personal paradigm. So these things belong to the non-physical world. But all our aspirations our physical. We want to acquire this, or consume this. And we literally we're over-consuming the material on earth to no end, because we're trapped in the playpen, in Babylon, and not able to await the perceptual framework of the non-physical world. And that's when you become an infinite being, when you can look into the non-physical world and look beyond the physical world and not just be reacting to that from the place of a problem, from the perspective of an issue or a problem or an obstacle, like the non-real world given that kind of power, given that kind of concern. And you wake up. Okay, I got 8 minutes. Eight minutes left in the live stream. So what scientists don't want you to know is that this whole earth is limited. The entire earth is limited, and all their discoveries in their experiment is to become unlimited beings through technological discovery, through scientific and technological discovery. They want to become an unlimited being. And it is a war between the seekers, those who want to become unlimited, and those who are totally slaves to the matrix, to the grid. There's a war between those two. And that's a war between, you could say, the elite and the religious, those who conform and those who create. There's a slight war going on. And then you have a war between those people who are trying to they're trapped in trying to physicalize their infiniteness, and a war between those who are spiritually awakened, who are beyond the physicalness right now. They don't need GMO in. They're already beyond it. They don't need to destroy the planet under the auspices of trying to become infinite beings, because they are in tune with their infinite selves right now. And they're similar to the elite because their object is the same. Their objective is the same. But they're not trying to use physical means in order to achieve it. They're really trying to awaken within themselves. And then you have the conformist, the regular sleep person in the matrix, who is not trying to be limited, who's not trying to be unlimited, and would die and give their lives in order to keep the construct going. Like they're protecting the world of limitations. They're trying to maintain the limits or the codes. So that's three people that I mentioned. So that's why you have, your scientists, and they're considered atheists, like not believing in God. Well, what they believe that they are unlimited. They're trying to they're going beyond the limits of what of how someone has created this and determined, what this is and what all that this could be and what are the rules of this and what you shouldn't do. They're defying that in a quest to awaken to their unlimited self, but they're just going about it in the most physical way. In God consciousness, you talk about genetically modified foods. We'll create new fruits and new vegetables and new everything. There are no rules. There are no limits as to what we can do as gods. So you got a lot of people, when they so-called awaken to God consciousness, they're waking up to fulfill a story that was written by somebody else. Awakening to God consciousness doesn't mean being able to be completely creative as a being. It means that you're fulfilling a story that was written, or that was already pre-written, and you want to walk into that story, and that's considered your divinity. So when they see an infinitely creative being, they consider that unrighteous or sacrilegious because, like I said, them being a God means they're fulfilling somebody else's shoes. They're trying to play out somebody else's story. And that's being holy. That's being divine to them. But true gods in God consciousness create their own reality. If they want a different type of fruit you never heard of, they make it. It's nothing that they cannot do. They make rain, hail, snow, and earthquakes. They make everything. So they're not, how could you be under the laws of nature when you are the creator of nature? But you have to get to that level of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to be able to now create nature. You're going from being under nature, being a slave to nature, a matrix, a grid, certain codes, certain rules, to being a creator of nature. And you see a lot of scientists doing that, and they think it's an advanced way because they have not got to the level of mind science where they can instantaneously create things and manifest things purely out of their consciousness. And many of them think they are creating things, but they're actually being created by creators to create things, but believing that it is them that's creating it. Because when you get to a certain level of God consciousness, now you're able to instantaneously manifest. There's no laws or rules by way in which that you can create something. You know, it's like it says in the Quran, Allah says, be and it is. That's it. No microscope, no test tubes, no petri dishes. He said, be and it is. That means that you're at the supreme level of consciousness where you can speak things into manifestation. You can just completely just manifest them out of what they would consider thin air, not realizing that, all air is thin. So if anything is created, it's coming out of thin air. Last 90 seconds. But scientists know that this is a matrix, and they've been doing everything they can do to try to go beyond the limitations that so-called nature imposes. And a lot of our modern-day luxuries and conveniences are based on us actually trying to transcend nature. Now, the problem is the European has been the main one doing this, and we're under his methods of transcending nature, and that's what we call luxuries and comforts and conveniences. And we've become a slave to that because we don't know it's truly about awakening our minds and transcending the physical in totality and recognizing ourselves as infinite beings, not being trapped within the comforts and luxuries of his level of development. I hope I didn't lose any of you all with this. So scientists know that they want to tap that unlimitlessness. So they're not at a level of the awakened beings and the gurus and the masters and gods because they still don't believe it. So they need to prove it. So they need to go through the long process of going through the material world, manipulating the material world in order to awaken to supreme consciousness. And they may never awaken to that because they may be so caught up in their physical contraptions and mechanisms and inventions that they may never get beyond the physical to really access complete and total creative consciousness. We in the after show, the last part of the show. We're no longer on the live stream. I want to open it up for questions and answers in this last hour because this is like a full show. I haven't done a full show in a long time. I said a lot on this particular show. If anybody have any questions or anything I can make clear for them, press 1. And I'll answer your questions, make it more clear for you, or deal with any topics or subjects you may want to deal with in the last hour. But scientists know that they have to get to the unlimited. They have to try to understand the physical world in a way that they surpass the present limitations of human consciousness. They know this. They're aware of this more than anybody else. That if we haven't got to a certain place, it's not because there are any natural laws in place to stop us from getting there. We have just not awakened to getting there, to doing it. It's there. If we can think of it, it's there. It's possible. But the space between us and it is what we call nature, natural laws. Where man's at and man's relationship to his environment and how he perceives his environment. Going beyond that, we can get to that infinite space to create. Now, we shouldn't go their way of doing it because their way, they're going to be on earth forever just playing in Babylon. They're never going to ascend to different planes. They're going to be playing with this stuff forever. They're going to be playing with matter. We want to play with antimatter. We want to play with dark matter. We want to create new universes, new realities, new natural worlds. And they're going to be just stuck here playing with this thing, feeling like they have gotten somewhere, and they just jumbling it around. They just really, playing musical chairs with what the ancient people have already done. They were sitting in this chair, now I'm sitting in this chair. They moved this around, now I'm going to learn how to move. You're just repeating it because they don't even understand why we're here and what we're supposed to do, but they know it's something that is unlimited, and they have made it knowledge, the quest for knowledge and information. But that's only the precursor, that's only the beginning. That's only like the introduction into our infiniteness is knowledge. The knowledge that they seek is just the beginning. It's only the beginning. I guess no questions tonight. Or comments, or anything that I can make clear.
Black Supremacy, I'll praise. Black Supremacy. How are you doing tonight, guys? Black Supremacy. Nah, you went in tonight. You pretty much covered everything. I've been listening this whole time, and it's supreme. We have to be more comfortable with having a more organic approach to life, totally ripping away from all this genetic stuff. Like, we can do the exact same thing, but do it in the most natural and purest way. And I think this is an excellent start to do that. This show was amazing. So thank you, God. Black Supremacy, God.
Black Supremacy, that's powerful. So a lot of stuff that people are doing in society today, that's per se going against the Bible and going against religions that are already there. They're transcending the limited world. They're stepping into being unlimited beings in what their way is. In one breath, you're saying that we're gods, but in another way, you're saying we're limited by this material world. That we're limited. That's what I'm hearing from the so-called conscious. I understand this from the Christian fundamentalists. I understand. I can understand how they perceive this world. But from the perspective of actual gods, like when they talk about, the carrot was made, this fruit was made, we made all of this stuff. All of it was made. We created all of this. We are constantly genetically modifying the world, the earth. We are creating. Every time you procreate, with another person, you're genetically modifying yourself. You're genetically modified. What gods do is modify and create. The thing is, are we modifying things in a way that's going to be less destructive, that's going to have us awaken less? Or are we modifying things that are empowering us and allowing us to that's more of a question. But no, we made all of this. So you can't in one breath say we're God and say, well, this is an invented fruit, this is an invented vegetable, this is an invented that, this is not real. None of this is real. And it is only as real as the minds who have created it and projected it. And its only relevance is how awakened those minds who have created and projected it are to what they are creating and projecting. Those are the facts. So not embracing or not, I would put it this way, not co-signing everything that is created is different from rebelling against our creative power and rebelling against us being creators. You cannot be with what is being created without being against us as creators and not expecting anything less of us than being creators. As we are conscious, awakened beings, you don't expect anything less. But some of these, ideas, ideologies, and people expect us actually to be doing less as creators and going by some pre-existing template or pre-existing format to define what our experience on this plane is supposed to be. And the only experience that we're supposed to have in this plane is completely expanding our consciousness further and further, putting up to even more unlimited ways of which we can manifest and create the most divinest reality imaginable by God. That is the quintessence of our experience here. Not to form fit something old, not to repeat or imitate or exist within the limited framework of something that always was. This is where you realize yourself beyond the limitation. You needed the contrast. You can only see something infinite if you are looking at it from a finite point of view. The infinite cannot see the infinite. It must take on a finite position temporarily to even begin to look upon its own vastness. The ocean cannot see itself. It only views itself through the eyes of the person in the boat. So we have to keep that in mind to not jump into the mindset of people per se that are conservative. What are you conserving? You're conserving something that is infinite. Doesn't have to be conserved. Like you're conserving water. Water is infinite if you know where to find it. If your mind is unlimited to how to access it, water is infinite on this earth. So everything we're trying to conserve, what we're trying to conserve is a limited world. It's how an unawakened mind maintains its place in a limited world through the illusion of conservation. But if we have unlimited and unexhaustible, infinite, immortal energy, what the hell can you conserve? What is conserving? So these are traps to have you counting the grains of sand on earth These are traps. Some people say, we want to move closer to the sun. We create suns. We are the suns. We should be coming up with how we can recreate suns, we're not limited as to what we can manifest. We created some of the rivers, some of the lakes. We've created lakes. If you go further and further back, we created everything that has a name. Everything that can be identified was created by God consciousness. And that's where we're trying to get back to, essentially. This earth paradigm that we're dealing with now is a slow process of getting back there. But beings of divine consciousness has embodied on earth to accelerate the journey towards ascension and total awakening as infinite and supreme beings, and not, like I said, not from a material perspective. One thing that the scientist is stuck on is just dealing with what's here in the material world. But we can do experiments in the astral world. We can travel through different astral worlds and different dimensions, and we can move into simultaneously existing in multi realities. And your scientist is not going to get there. Your scientist is not there yet. He's still counting, molecules. They just they just now recently woke up to quantum physics and quantum world and vacuums and black holes. They just now waking up. As far as they're going to be able to go with their scientific experimentation and investigation into an unlimited world is ultimately going to take them into the spiritual world, spiritual reality. But they're going to be getting there because they're worshiping their little findings and the little progress they made with playing and the baby the playpen in Babyland. So everything you see going on in this world is not against God. There's just a slow process to get to God consciousness. When you talk about these people that's walking around transgender, they've transcended gender. They transcended being a human being that is of a definitive natural orientation. That's deep. We say, well, that's evil. That's a bad thing. That's just that and all that. They have transcended what has been dictated in the material world as to what they can be in the material world. They've transcended that. What do you expect? A God is going to be whatever they create to be. If they create themselves to be a woman, that's what they create themselves to be. So it's a hypocrisy when we say we're supposed to awaken to God consciousness and realize what we already say, but no, there's a natural world, a natural reality. That's an illusion. Solar energy is not natural, but they say it's natural. You're just naturally harnessing it's renewable energy. But that's man-made. That's created by scientists, the utilization of solar energy for technology. And it's taking up massive space and massive land, and it's using and extracting certain minerals and metals from the earth in order to build a solar panel. So that's not necessarily natural. But we redefine what natural is because relative to running wires and cords and using fossil fuels, solar is considered more natural and more organic because we make these things up. That's what gods do. Create knowledge and information, and we redefine and redesignate things and recategorize things based on what we're creating, what we're manifesting, and how we're becoming aware of our unlimited selves and our unlimited ability to create. So you've got beings creating themselves now. They're choosing how they're going to create and how they're going to manifest themselves, and they're working along with scientists to prove how unlimited they are. But the thing about living gods on earth and awakened beings is we don't have to prove how unlimited we are, and we're not looking to experience the totality of our unlimitedness in the material world, because we know that the entirety of the material world is limited in and of itself. So we have to tap into our spiritual self, our oversouls, and our higher selves in order to experience the infinite aspects of who we are. It's not going to happen in the material world. So now all the pain and the suffering and the depression and all this is because you expect something more from a limited paradigm than it can ever possibly provide. And when you awaken to your infinite self, you're aware of that. So you're not caught up into the pain and suffering narratives of this world, unlimited utopia in a limited material construct reality. You have to expand your consciousness to a higher or supernatural state, and now to come back and infuse the earth with that, and that's your heaven on earth. That's when you start being happy, because you say, well, hold up. I'm no longer looking and believing in this material limited world. So now I'm being in touch with my higher self, my super soul, my super self, and now I'm bringing that level of consciousness into this world and transmuting the energy of this plane and expanding my consciousness in ways that I'm breaking through the illusions of limitations. I'm reconstructing my now. And now I'm experiencing happiness and joy and peace. But as long as I'm looking to this, what's created, as long as I'm looking to the old paradigm, I'm looking to the old construct. As long as I'm leaning to the natural world with all of these idealism, I'm going to be disappointed. I'm going to be unhappy. I'm going to feel deceived. I'm going to feel that it's impossible. I'm going to be depressed because I'm believing in a limited reality. Realizing that the purpose of the appearance of it, of its limitations, that the so-called struggle and the pain and suffering is only there as a stimulant to make the juices within your God consciousness flow, contribute to a greater reality, inspiration for expansion. I hope you feel me on that. So it was supposed to be limited, and if you ask anybody, how they grew up, their upbringing, they always find some limitations. They could have the exact childhood you wanted, but they're not happy about it. It's all, I missed that, it wasn't there, it wasn't that. We had all the money, but we didn't have that, All this shit is limited. And there's parasites that's telling you that, it's just your situation was this and it should have been that way. Those are parasites. This whole plane is limited. The whole focus of these parasitic entities is to keep you focused on the material world in a way where you cannot ascend. So they have to highlight and put emphasis on certain aspects of your experiences to paint a particular picture or narrative to keep you locked into the material world. You're feeling lesser and lack and missing out and all that, not realizing that on the other side of this fabricated illusion, this fabricated world, on the other side of that is your infinite self, that is happiness, that is bliss, that is peace, that is harmony, has already arrived, that cannot be without, that cannot be in lack, that cannot be deceived, that cannot be on the other side of all that. You are supremely and infinitely abundantly whole. And you only have to be fixated on this realm of illusion in a particular way to rob you of all that, so that other entities who cannot ascend beyond this particular plane can feed off of you in that state and leeches. Because they can't grow, and their food source is here. This is where they eat, but they need to eat you in a material way. And you have to be fixated on that. And then that leads to the consumerism, because now you're trying to buy your way out of hell when you really need to re-perceive your way out of hell. You're trying to buy your way out of hell. You're trying to physically connect your way out of hell. And it's your consciousness that really needs to shift and need to awaken. I hope y'all hear me. So scientists just have not told you that they know that it's all unlimited. It's what we break into. It's what we are able to perceive. It's what we are able to create. It's what we are able to become aware of. It's what we are able to tap. But they're just stuck in doing it in a physical way. And your yogis and your avatars and your enlightened beings are doing it straight off consciousness. Straight off consciousness. They're further than your scientists. Because while they're trying to build ships and spaceships to go to outer space, these different enlightened beings are traveling, are astral traveling. They going there, here, and everywhere. They don't need a ship or anything material. They're transmuting the material world by utilizing their consciousness. They are the most organic part of the earth, because organic just means original. And everything that we see here was made. So the origin of everything must be consciousness. So if you want to get to the origin or the organic, the original aspect, then it has to be a consciousness and not an object that has been breathed on, affected, manipulated, fashioned, and affected by man's or human's natural level of consciousness. It's all been affected by that. There's nothing free of that type of manipulation in the material world. So to get back to the origin, it has to be a consciousness state, which they're trying to get you there in meditation. They're trying to get you back to that conscious and original state through meditation that originated all of that. Because what organicness is a state of consciousness. It's a state of mind that perceives how everything that is manifested has been manipulated. Everything manifested has been manipulated. Man has put its spin on it. It's been spent. The molecular spin in a direction already. We want to get these drones. We want to start flying. Well, where are we flying first at? In the astral world. We're already flying there. What are you trying to do? Where are you flying to? Where can you fly to on Earth? It's still Earth when you get there. Everything we're doing in our scientific, physical advancements is imitating what we've already achieved in the spiritual world, in the spiritual reality. We're already immortal. We already can fly. We can time travel. Everything they're trying to achieve is unlimited power. Because when you go to sleep at night, there's light there. There's the sun. There's no solar panel. There's no generator. There's no light poles, but there's light being created in the astral world that's infinite, an infinite source of energy. So everything they're trying to do is an imitation of the spiritual world. And they think they can cheat and do it without waking up. The good part is they do recognize that there's some limitlessness there. But the bad part is they don't realize that, hey, you got to fully wake up. Anyone who totally worships the material world without waking up, it cannot help but to be oppressive. It cannot help to oppress others. But that which is stuck sticks others. That which is in prison imprisons. That which is exploited exploits. So they can't help but to do that because they are in a state of desperation trying to recreate their limited selves in a limited world versus just waking up. But they do know, hey, it's unlimited. That they don't accept no for an answer. They don't accept any of nature's limits. Like your religious people do. Or your people who just all out believe in limitation. No matter what you tell them, no, you can't do that. No, you can't. No, it don't go. No, they just all out believe in limitation. And they say we're supposed to be awakened beings, we're supposed to be gods, but all they believe in is limitation. I'm in this show, this King Noble Black Supremacy. Stay tuned. I'm going to be coming at you a little more this week. I'm going to be coming live at you. Make sure you join the website, www.kingnoblepblacksupremacy.com. Join, sign up, Black Supremacy.